This vlog, a little more serious, and it's been one we've wanted to talk about for a while. It's about my haemophilia. I'll start with what haemophilia is, for those of you who don't know. When your blood forms a clot, whether that be outside the body or inside the body, there's fundamentally 13 stages, and different forms of haemophilia involve missing different stages. And I've got the most common form of haemophilia, haemophilia A, and that's where I missed the 8th stage. So in the haemophilia world we call it factor VIII because it's a small protein, which is terribly ironic that we're on factor bikes now, and my haemophilia team had a good laugh about that. It was a very inside joke. So what that means though, when your blood forms a clot, if it's real small, like a paper cut's not going to kill me, but if it's a substantial cut outside or internal bleeding is generally the more problematic problem with haemophiliacs. It will look like a clot is forming, and then that clot will break down and it will continue to bleed. So I can suffer without medication internal bleeding into joints, which it kind of feels like you've broken a bone. You've just got this pain in a joint that means you can't really move it, you have to rest it, and yeah, it can cause some sort of longer term damage, which I have in one of my elbows. That's as much as I can straighten it, that's as much as I can bend it, so it's safe to say if Graham O'Bree's position for the hour record still existed, I would fail. And that's through, when I was a child I had a lot of internal bleeds into this joint, which has left it damaged. It's kind of an accelerated form of arthritis because blood inside a joint capsule that's not where blood should be. Haemophilia is a genetic disease. It's caused, it's my mum's fault, bless her. Haemophilia is an interesting one. You might have learned about it in biology when you're in school, because women carry it and men have it. And there's a very small chance that women can have it as well, but it's in like 99.9% of cases it's males that have it, women that carry it. So my mum is a carrier of haemophilia, and before I mentioned, with haemophilia you can get different severities, and I have it as bad as it gets. But my mum's a carrier, which means she's not affected by the condition like I am, but she's obviously passed it on to me. My grandfather from my mum's side unfortunately passed just before I was diagnosed with haemophilia, and we really wanted the doctors wanted to get a blood test to see if there was anything there, but given that he suffered some major injuries in the Second World War and recovered, one would presume that he was fine and didn't have it. So, and it can be passed on. So if I was to have kids, and the way it works is if I was to have boys, that would be the end of it. But if I was to have girls, then it would be they would be carriers, and then there's a 50% chance they would pass it on, or they would pass it on. I should know this, but I always get confused. Basically, I won't have a kid with haemophilia, but I might have a grandkid with one. So that's what makes it really quite rare. It's 1 in 5,000, I think, have it. There's not many of us. A lot of people ask what it's like to have haemophilia, and for me it's normal. It's no different. Well, it is different, but I've always lived with it, so it is normal for me. I think it was a shock for mum and dad, especially with there being no history of it in the family. Mum and dad hadn't really ever heard of haemophilia, and I was bruising a lot as a baby. Mum and dad would pick me up, put me down, and I might have a thumbprint of a bruise on my rib cage, and they took me to the doctors a lot to say it's just my mum's intuition. She's like, something's not right with my baby. Took me to the doctors a lot, and the doctors kept sending mum and dad away saying, it's just a baby that bruises easily, it's nothing to worry about, you are worrying too much. Which I think is a common theme for parents, definitely a common theme for parents of haemophiliacs, 100% a common theme of parents of haemophiliacs that are pro cyclists as well. And it came to a head when I was about 18 months old, where mum said to the doctor, I want a blood test, something's really not right. And the doctor, or the GP, disagreed so much that he threw the forms across the paper, my mum, to sign, just because of what a baby going through a blood test is quite a traumatic experience. And so I had the blood test. Apparently it was every bit as traumatic as they said, but ironically or coincidentally, I tripped over on the way out the doctor's surgery and split a little piece of skin that attaches your lip to your gum. Thought sort of nothing of it at the time. Well, yeah, I'd hurt myself. Mum and Dad put me to bed, because this is what happens. It looks like it's forming a clot, it looks like it's healing, and then that clot will break down and bleeding will start again. So Mum and Dad checked on me in the night, and I was sleeping basically in a pool of blood. At which point I think their biggest fear was leukemia, because the symptoms are quite similar. They got a night doctor in, an emergency night doctor came over, and he said, "I have a feeling you have a boy with haemophilia here." And days later, the blood test came back, obviously showed I had severe haemophilia A, and the GP apologised to my parents and said he was going to read up more on it. But you know, worried parents is a common theme for doctors, I guess, and it's diagnosis, I believe, is one of the hardest parts of medicine and practicing medicine. And what are the chances of a haemophiliac walking into your clinic? Pretty slim. So, you know, I think it's, and I say we were lucky because we caught it that early. There's been some horrifying cases of kids going to nursery, going to primary school, preschool, and covered in bruises, and the teachers flagging it up, social services getting involved, and taking kids away from parents, and it's not until it's diagnosed that the kids get returned to the parents. And so as much as it was bad, it could have been worse. I've never hidden my haemophilia. We've done some fantastic things with it. With Oakley and the Little Bleeders glasses, celebrating World Haemophilia Day, Katusha with the jersey that went extraordinarily well last year. I've never hidden it, but my treatment is done via an intravenous injection, which I administer myself. Just there, that's where I go because I'm right-handed, and that's where my mum used to go because I'm right-handed. Now the UCI have a no-needle policy. The no-needle policy, for those that don't know, is there for if a medication cannot be administered via like other methods, so like orally or up the bum or wherever. Like yeah, so my treatment can only be administered via an intravenous injection. There's a possibility of a subcutaneous, which is just under the skin injection, but that form of medication wouldn't be right for my cycling, basically. That's a long story short. So I've never produced that in an image because, unfortunately, because of the 1%, because of the distrust I have in the 1% on social media, to take that image of me with a needle in my arm and turn it into something it's not within professional sport. But I could administer an intravenous injection to myself at the age of 9, and a lot of haemophiliacs can. If you want to go on a school trip, it's something you have to do, otherwise you don't get to go on a school field trip. So during a race, it's daily. During a race, it's every second day in training or in normal life, and that is governed by how much I weigh, basically. And then if you have any bleeding episodes, then that gets raised. If I have a nasty crash, then I might have a bit extra as well. If I break a bone, then that's all. There's quite a bit extra to control the internal bleeding, but so far it's been really quite easy. Joining a new team is hassle because I have to explain. Firstly, I have to explain to the doctors and the directors and then the riders, and this has happened once before where the team, and I'm not here to name names, the team didn't inform the the riders of my condition or what that involves for me. And a rider walked into a room at training camp, saw me with a needle in my arm and was like, "What the fiddle are you doing?" And then I was like, they haven't told you, have they? I'm going to have to explain this. And then a letter gets sent to the UCI. The UCI are fully aware of my situation, and other than that, I'm a normal bike rider. And we've done talks to parent groups with little bleeders and with campaigns. I can win races. I can race the Tour de France and stuff, and that's a great message for haemophilia. But actually, one of the strongest messages we sent was a parent asked, "What does your team do when you crash?" And it was Movistar that asked this question, and it was like, "What do we do when you crash?" And it's not if, it is when. I said, well, if I can get up and carry on, then I will, and if I can't, then probably need to go to hospital. And I said, right, well, so like anyone else on the team. And I said, yeah, but hospital's going to panic a little bit more when I get there, and I've got medication in the team car at all times that follows the race, and we'll usually inform the race doctor that he's got a bleeder in the peloton. But I've never had a crash where it's been an impact. And so for the parent, they said, right, well, if you're not being treated any differently in actually quite a high risk sport, then why should my kid be treated any differently in school? And that's one of the things we're doing at Little Bleeders is creating a better environment within the UK for kids with haemophilia. So, but yeah, that's my treatment. That's every day, needle in my arm. I can't begin to tell you how lucky I am with when I was born and the country I was born in. A worryingly short amount of time before I was born, haemophiliacs were treated with concentrated blood transfusions. Now, my current medication is completely synthetic. It's about 10 millilitres of fluid. And I'm sure the question is going to come up, but it does nothing for me on a bike to maybe go any faster. It just replaces what I'm missing. Just before I was born, there was haemophiliacs treated with concentrated blood transfusions. They often would come from overseas because there wasn't enough in the UK, and the screening process overseas was nowhere near the level of what it is, or what it then was afterwards. And so there's a frightening number of haemophiliacs that have HIV, hepatitis, all those horrifying things that, as if things weren't bad enough. And that's something Theresa May said, this isn't right, and brought this all back up again to make sure that those affected, because it was very much brushed under the carpet, which was, it was good from her. The life expectancy of a haemophiliac in the 1960s was less than 20, or just around about 20 years old, just under. The life expectancy 100 years ago was 13 years old for a haemophiliac. It was, now it's 10 years shy of the normal sort of life expectancy, whatever that is. So, yeah, I live for today. But I think it just, like, haemophilia has come a very long way in a very short space of time, and it's still, the curve is still steep. We're on the cusp of gene therapy, which will be cured, to use that word loosely. I mean, genetically I'll still have it, but it'll be one injection and job done, like normal factor 8 levels for the rest of my life, by the looks of things. I mean, it's still in a trial phase. I'm literally lucky to be alive, and certainly lucky with when I was born, and lucky with where I was born. And this is one of the things that we want to do in Little Bleeders is equal care for all, because 70% of the world's haemophilia population don't get access to the right treatment, and that's not fair. The Little Bleeders, we have a worldwide goal, we have a UK goal. The UK goal is policy change. things like physiotherapy, access to physiotherapy for haemophiliacs, access to equal care across the country, just generally improving the situation for haemophiliacs. But worldwide, the problem's far worse, and it's not about just taking treatment out to sort of places that don't have it, because it's not a sustainable solution. The trick is to educate the governments to pour resources in, because without the medication, it's you're rewinding the clock back to the 60s, and that's not fair. Not when it becomes a postcode thing or the country thing. So when I was in primary school, things were I'm treated now prophylactically, so I'm treated to stop bleeding episodes occurring. But when I was in school, the thinking was to treat for problems. So if I would develop an elbow bleed, then I would then have treatment to fix it. Which did mean at school there was time spent on crutches, there was time spent with my arm in a sling. There was one wheelchair, I think. And there's social impacts to that. I wasn't invited to kids' birthday parties because the parents had the HIV thing in their heads. Mum and Dad sheltered me from that, thankfully. And getting on to a more positive note is the haemophilia put me in pro cycling. When we were young, the doctors said to my mum and dad that swimming was a very good way of keeping the haemophilia at bay. So, because if you carry excess weight, that's more pressure on joints. There's weaker muscles, weaker joints, and they're more susceptible to bleeding. So, this is swimming. It's low risk. It works every muscle and joint in the body. So I was swimming a lot, and I wasn't very good. And on top of that, obviously they warned us away from sports in school, and in the UK rugby is everything. Rugby, football, and I wasn't allowed to play it, and I tried being a referee, but that is being a referee in secondary school is the fastest way to unpopularity, so I sacked that off quite quickly. And we see this in a lot of young haemophiliacs, that instill like a desire to be good at something. Like my dad was a racing driver, so we did a bit of go-karting, which is safe. We definitely followed our own path, but when I say we, like mum and dad followed our own path and sort of managed our own risk, I guess. I did sailing, but I had to wear a helmet because of the boom, and head injuries and haemophiliacs are not a good thing at all. Like bleeding on the brain, and then my dad and his mates collectively went through, I think, a midlife crisis, started congregating on Dad's drive every Thursday night to go mountain biking. And when I was 9, I said to Dad, I was like, can I have a go? And he was like, not yet. So when I was 11, I asked again, and Dad took me out mountain biking. Pads, helmets, every precaution, like nice, gently into it. And started joining the guys, and then got a bit of a bug for it. And a guy called Eric Smith, I knew he was into road racing, and I'd wanted to have a go on a road bike just from the speed thing. It's all about speed. And asked him if I could have a go. Went and watched his son race a Molten 10. His name was Glenn. He was on a team called Dataphonics, which you might have seen a very young Cavendish in similar kit. And then I had a go on a Molten 10 a week later. Did 28:01. Which wasn't bad on the first outing on an steel Eddie Merckx bike, Campag Chorus. So I started stylish. I enjoyed the bike racing, but I discovered 2 years later, after getting second in Schoolboys National 10, the GHS, Ian Stannard won it. I was second, but I was in a category 2 years younger. That was the pivotal moment where I was like, okay, I found something I'm good at and I'm going to tap into this. But we did have to tell the doctors. So we got into competitive road cycling. Is that okay? And they said, actually cycling, the non-impact aspect of the pedalling motion is good for joints, it's good for your muscles, and they were keen for me to stay fit and healthy, so that was good. And they did say though, I remember the words, like it was yesterday, he said, well, we'd rather you played chess or a musical instrument, but if that's what you want to do, we will support you. And it went from there. The Cadell Evans race, and this is going, bear with me. Cadell Evans race I've really enjoyed for the last 2 years because there's a young lad there. And now, sporting wise, as far as I know, I'm the first elite athlete with haemophilia. Other haemophiliacs, there's a guy called Jack Bridge who competed in the London 2012 Paralympics. And yeah, so we're a bit thin on the ground, but it's a generational thing. There will be more, and they're coming. The stories we get at Little Bleeders, young haemophiliacs are doing things now that I couldn't do when I was a kid. So, like I said, the rate of progression is still, like that curve is still very steep, and so I might be one of the first, but there's going to be a lot more, and you know, it's very evident hearing stories. And there's one lad in Australia who will cut in a clip from his time there. There's a young lad called Will. He surfs competitively, same as me, severe haemophilia A, and managing it like a trooper. Can inject himself, and it's quite something to see have another example of where haemophilia has come from and where it is now. And he's an inspiration, and it's 2 years now I've managed to catch up with him and his family, and share stories. He's quite something. So when you're not at school, Will, what are you doing?
Most of the time I like to surf when the weather's nice. Surf competitively, have a lot of friends that surf.
When did you start?
I first got out in the water and sort of simulated surfing at the age of 2, but like stood on a board in flat water.
Yeah.
And Dad sort of just pushed me around.
And you also have haemophilia?
Yes, haemophilia A.
Yeah, severe?
Severe.
Same as me?
Yes. Severe.
What have you broken?
I haven't broken any bones just yet, thankfully. I'm sure I might when I'm older. Not looking forward to it.
No.
But I actually fractured my cheekbone pretty recently when I was surfing up in the Gold Coast. I was surfing 4 to 5 foot, and a wave came through at this one point, and at first it was just a small sort of bump, and I'm like, yeah, just another wave, and it kind of like jacked up. I went to duck dive, and the board was ripped from my hand. I hit the bottom, and then the board came around and smacked me in the face. I managed to fracture my cheekbone, and also had a massive blood nose. It was really, really bad. Ended up going to hospital, x-rays and everything, but I turned out to be pretty fine. I had a massive, really badly swollen cheek.
Yeah. I'll start wrapping things up because I know this has been quite a long lesson, but thank you if you're still here, thank you for listening. So if you want to know more, Little Bleeders is my charity. It's been going a while. Our strapline is Move More, Be More, and you can find Little Bleeders simply at littlebleeders.com. There's also the Haemophilia Society, so the UK society for, like, the official one for haemophilia. There's World Haemophilia Federation. The Americans spelled haemophilia with no A, so but you'll find that anyway. And there's a new one that's we've partnered up with recently for families with bleeding disorders. They do some fantastic work with more on the ground, supporting families through their haemophilia journey like we did. So yeah, thanks for listening.